I'm Tony Taylor. Are you here for Leaders Lead the podcast? Let's go. Hey, how did you beat me? Look, let me tell you about this podcast. We got like 5 seconds. Leaders Lead the podcast is about leadership. Not just the leader without, but the leader within. All of these leaders that I'm talking to across the country, well, across the world now, they have one thing in common, and that's that they have overcome some insurmountable obstacles to get to where they're at today. Come on, let's go. Welcome to Leaders Lead the podcast. I am super excited. I've gotten at least 100 people, more than 100 people, reach out because they wanted Thurston County's Sheriff, Derek Sanders, on the show. I'll tell you a little bit about Derek before we get to the interview. Derek Sanders serves as the 24th Sheriff of Thurston County and is famously known as one of the youngest sheriffs in state history, taken office at the age of 29. Damn. He began his career in law enforcement as a patrol deputy and quickly making a name for himself as a highly proactive crime magnate dedicated to community engagement and transparency and data-driven policing. Hey, that's crazy. Let's go ahead and start this. At 29, what were you thinking, man?
That was definitely one of the scenarios where, if you don't see your values on the ballot, it's probably time to run. But I will say that it's funny, I tell the actual story to people, and this whole thing started by complete accident. I just got in an argument with my boss. That's really all that happened. Him and I got into an argument, and the end of that argument was him basically telling me, if you think you can do better, then take my job. And
Damn.
I think maybe a week later, same day, I failed for office. I didn't even know where to file. I had to Google it. And I learned about the PDC and the rules and everything. So, I think it's important, and you'll see this theme throughout this podcast today, is that I had no intention of winning. So for me, even to this day, I'm playing with house money. I know I'm not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to get elected at 29 to lead the 6th largest sheriff's office in the state of Washington. But now that I'm here, I'm trying to seize the moment.
That's interesting that you have that mindset and that mentality. Like I'm not supposed to be here. It sounds like that inspires you to keep going the way that you go. Did I get that right?
Oh yeah. And I love being told that I can't get it done, that I'm not going to get us into a new building that I'm sitting in, that we're not going to get deputies' pay increases, that we're not going to improve our fleet, that we're not going to reduce crime, that we're not going to be able to get the technology we need access to. I love hearing that. It's my favorite thing.
And it sounds like you've been able to bring in those resources. What would you say has been the catalyst of that?
Community relationship. That's it. If there's one thing I can give advice to every police chief and sheriff out there, your community is your greatest ally. And if they don't know what your problems are, they can't advocate for you.
Right. I saw where you were able to get over 200 people down to y'all's building for protest. What was that like?
It was interesting. To sum it up the best, our county chair, Ty Mincer, he's our lead commissioner, our chair. Mm-hmm. He said after that, actually during that meeting, he said, I just want to point out that this is the largest convening we've ever had here for a budget discussion. And I think the piece that stuck with me the most about that is he said, this was the most productive, polite crowd I've ever had the chance to engage with over budget deliberations. No one was mean. No one was rude. No one blamed the county commissioners for all their problems. It was literally just about save our sheriff's office from drastic cuts that are going to hurt public safety. And that made me really proud. Not just who showed up, but the quality of the people who showed up to basically advocate for the sheriff's office. I knew almost none of them.
Wow. And but it sounds like they knew you, they knew your work ethic, and they knew that if they came there screaming and hollering, they're probably going to screw it up. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. And the county, I just got done in a budget meeting today. That's where I was coming from. But, the county is still going through those discussions. But I think it's important to understand that elected leaders are borrowing their authority. It's just borrowed authority. This is a temporary position. I will not be the sheriff forever, and those won't be the county commissioners forever. Our job is to try to be the vessel for the constituents that we represent. So when you have 200 people show up and say, not this, that's really hard to ignore. And likewise, you see that with other entities too. Talk about, flock cameras, right? Look at the flock camera thing that went down in Olympia. A lot of Olympia constituents showed up, and Olympia made the decision to remove those cameras from their streets because they recognized that regardless of their own personal beliefs or opinions or knowledge about the product, or their job is to represent those people.
And they didn't want it. What do you think about the flock cameras?
Oh, so this is 100% 50-50 for me. The technology is super powerful. And on one hand, it's so useful for law enforcement. We don't have flock cameras, but we've piggybacked off other agencies and gotten help from them who have them. And I mean, we have prevented cold case homicides. We've solved hit and runs where animals were killed, and all these crazy things that have been solved with it. At the same time, my concern with the flock cameras, especially in Washington state, is that it was an example where the technology outpaced the legislation. So there were no guardrails for it. So people started doing crazy stuff. They were PDRing every photo that the camera took. And then using that data, you could stalk your ex-girlfriend who has an order against you by looking through the system. And so I really like that Senator Trudeau from Tacoma was able to get some legislation passed, which I supported, to put some guardrails on that stuff. Technology is so great and it's awesome. I'm a huge proponent of using technology to solve our problems, but we have to have guardrails.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. And I know a lot of folks were concerned with those flock cameras being used by ICE. Did you hear that quite a bit?
Oh, yeah. And this is the one area where I'll totally fall on my sword and say I was wrong. When I took office, we were interested in the flock technology, and it was really starting to catch on. And a big reason for that is that law enforcement here in this state, everybody knows that we're 51 out of 51. We're dead last in officers per capita. So flock becomes a force multiplier for us when we have an extra set of eyes on different intersections throughout the county. So it helps point us in the direction of missing people, stolen cars, kidnapped kids, people with felony warrants, suspects, all those types of things. And I had to kind of shift my perspective once the whole ICE thing came out, because I'm like, as a company, you have some ownership to ensure that the clients that you're providing your product to, the city and sheriff's offices across the state, are following state law. Like we can't, whether you agree with state law or not, as a company, you have some stake in that to ensure that your clients are unknowingly violating state law.
No, that's good. I'm glad you say that. One of somebody in the community was asking that question, like, where do you stand on that? And are you going to do the right thing? And if we were to get those cameras, do the right thing and hand that stuff over to ICE so that we can get rid of all the illegal people in our county.
So, state law is very clear about exactly what law enforcement is allowed to do in terms of immigration enforcement, and it's nothing. We don't participate. And the sheriff's office, I was one of the first sheriffs in the state, first police agencies in the state, when things started really ramping up with the immigration stuff last year, to come out and say, hey, like, we're not participating in this. This is a federal government job. And we're going to continue to build community ties and make sure that everyone feels safe calling 911. And so for me, I think people get a little mixed up because it's become so polarized. You're either pro federal government or you're not, and it's really not like that for me. My job is to follow state law, uphold state law. I am not a federal agent, so I don't enforce federal laws, and I think some people really skipped that part in their civics class. There is a big difference between federal, state, and local municipal laws. Similarly, as the sheriff, for instance, I don't enforce Lacey Municipal Code, even if I'm in the city of Lacey conducting, a traffic enforcement. I enforce state law. And so it's similarly, I don't go out and enforce federal law. That's not my job. That's not who I'm beholden to. I'm beholden to the citizens of Thurston County and the state laws of Washington. So as we go down this path, I think people get that part mixed up with, oh, so you don't work with the federal government at all. And no, that's not true. Just on immigration. I still work every day with the federal government on human trafficking, crimes against children, fraud, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, all these major felony type cases. It's just that what we're not going to do is enforce an administrative warrant because someone's come into the country, quote unquote, illegally. That part's not in our job description. Now, if a federal judge issues a warrant for someone, that's different. We will of course follow a federal judge ruling. That part we are beholden to. But I think this conversation's got a little out of context.
Yeah. What if here's another scenario. This is a question that I've had for a while. What if you see those the federal agencies coming into our community and pretty much terrorizing the place, kind of like the situation that we had in Chicago, where they had like Blackhawks over the community and they were just like basically wreaking havoc. What would that look like for us as citizens in Thurston County, as far as the support that we would get from your office?
So our procedure, which we put out this procedure maybe a month or two ago, just to help give our deputies some guidelines, because it's not just your scenario, it's also reports that people might be getting kidnapped, right? And they don't know if it's ICE or not because they're not wearing correct markings or they're wearing face coverings, whatever it ends up being. And so our stance and our policy and procedure is all about peacekeeping. So our job is to show up. And quite frankly, a lot of where this procedure was developed from for me was from the Renee Good scenario. So the last thing I want to see is an armed confrontation between federal agents and protesters, if you will, where someone gets unnecessarily killed. So our job and our goal is to show up, especially if, let's say, ICE is conducting a legitimate operation. Well, our job really as law enforcement here locally is to show up, body cams rolling, and be that peace buffer between the federal government and the citizens who are really not happy with what they're doing. Because what we really don't want is to see that escalate. Our entire purpose here is going to be to try to de-escalate things, create a barrier. And our procedure goes into some common sense things about like, hey, if the incident is taking place in the roadway, block the road for them so that cars don't come through and start hitting protesters or agents or whatever. So really just getting deputies thinking about what our actual role here. So in that, apocalyptic scenario that you're providing, our goal is going to be peacekeepers to the best of our ability.
Yeah, that sounds good. I saw that you had put up a post about Renee Good, and I thought that was really good because, I'll be honest, I didn't expect any law enforcement to speak out against that. And I'm curious, what made you do it? Like, did that feel unnatural to you? Did it feel weird? Did you get any pushback by any of your peers in the other counties? Like, what the hell are you doing, Derek?
Yeah, there's definitely some internal pushback to that kind of stuff, but that's the kind of deputy that I've been for a long time. I can remember, as a newer deputy, I got kicked out of a cop Facebook group because I critiqued them about their criticisms of cannabis. And I pointed out their hypocrisies, right? As someone who's never used cannabis and don't really have any interest to, I couldn't help but notice the hypocrisy that, some of these officers, mostly in other states, quite frankly, but they love bragging about taking people to jail for cannabis and then going home and cracking some Jack Daniel. And I'm like, that's not good for you either. And, alcohol, I'm going to say is worse, maybe even more hardcore than cannabis. So I got kicked out of the cop group. So I've never been one to shy away from my opinions. And I'll be real honest, in a lot of ways, I have very much libertarian views on the world. Very much a liberty first, which is kind of ironic coming from a law enforcement officer whose job is to take away people's freedom when I develop probable cause to arrest them. But nonetheless, I look at some of this stuff and I look at the Renee Good thing and controversy. I'm okay with that. At the end of the day, like I told you earlier, I'm only going to hold this position for so long. At some point in time, it's going to be someone else's turn, someone else's problem. It'll be theirs to take and run with. And I have to be able to escape this at the end of it, whether it's in 6 months or 10 years or whatever. I have to be able to leave this knowing that I said everything that I meant and I meant everything that I said. And I got my message out there. And yeah, sometimes that's going to be criticizing some really, really poor police tactics. That's really all it was. It wasn't anti-ICE. It wasn't pro-ICE. It was really about the fact that we want our deputies to go home. we also want the people they're dealing with to make it to their destination safely. And I really just, yeah, I guess I'll end it there because I got in trouble last time I elaborated further.
Do you think that people underestimated you because of your age? And I ask you this because I was probably 30 something years old when I pinned on captain at the fire department, and I remember just getting so much shit about that from everybody. Like, oh, you still freaking wet behind the ears, and me personally, I'm just like, damn, man, I felt like I needed to really prove myself. Did you feel that kind of pressure?
Oh, yeah, I still do. I think for me, my youth was used against me so much during my run that I'm like, you know what? It's my weapon now. To me, it became lightning in a bottle. And basically I just pinned my ears back and ran circles because the one thing, people who are younger, they don't have the experience. But typically speaking, we've got a little more energy. We can go a little bit longer in the day. We can wake up a little bit earlier with less sleep. We're not as impacted by fatigue and things like that. And so definitely over the last few years, especially after taking office, I always joke with people, there's only 24 hours in the day and 4 of those are wasted on sleep. So, the ability to squeeze more stuff into my day and get more stuff done, I think is a benefit, not a weakness.
You said 4. That reminds me of another question of a community member had, like, when the hell does he sleep?
I get to sleep. Yeah. I slept until 8 this morning. It felt really good. I do drink a lot of Red Bull and a lot of Celsius, and I am on the go quite a bit. But I will say that this is my kind of sheriffing. Like this is the way for me that makes the job enjoyable, unpredictable. I might show up on graveyard shift. I might show up on day shift. I might show up at your community event unannounced and surprise everyone. Like, to me, that's the cool thing about this position is there are no hours. There is no guideline. There is a certain set of RCWs that have to be met. And outside of that, especially when I took office, I had no transition. I took over. I was banned from the courthouse from the day I got elected or won the election to the day that I took over. So I wasn't allowed to be up there.
You said banned?
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to go up there. So I showed up. They didn't want me up there. So yeah. And so on January 1 of 2023, I got the keys. And I'm like, all right. So I don't know what the sheriff's supposed to do. So I thought, what better time to recreate the job description and make it what I think it should be instead of what it's traditionally been, which is a Monday through Friday, sit behind the desk, take an extra long lunch kind of sheriff. And my perspective of this is like, listen, you're only going to get so much time in this role and you can sleep after.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's good for the community. Don't sound like it's good for you though.
I'm getting some grays in here. I need to go buzz this down.
How old are you now?
32.
32.
Yeah, I'll be 33 next month.
32. So you can say you got a lot of time left. A lot of time left in this job, unless you tell somebody if they think they can do it better, then they should run against you. Right.
Yeah, I'm careful about that. Yeah. And the other thing too is like contested elections are good for the public. They are. So uncontested elections are write-offs. The public stops. Honestly, you look at some positions, and I'll argue the sheriff had kind of gotten to that point here in Thurston where the incumbent's in the position so long, people stop even paying attention to the race. I can't tell you how many people have reached out over the last 3 years, thousands probably, who said, I didn't even know what the sheriff did.
Oh, wow.
Now, like not that he wasn't doing anything, but like we didn't even know all the responsibilities that a sheriff has between the jail and civil and riot suppression and criminal, apprehension and public service and all these things that we've highlighted. And that's the risk that you run when you have just unopposed elections forever, is that you don't get invited to the forums because it's unopposed. You stop having to answer a lot of those questions. So democracy is good.
No, I agree to that, because it's almost like, you just expect one person to do one person to do the job, and you're not, I don't know. I would feel like if I'm challenged for a position, it would probably make me want to do better. Let the people know what it is that I'm doing, right?
I like it. Make me justify my positions. And if I can't justify them, then I should either change it or hand it over to someone else.
Yeah, you and that's one thing that I want to tell you. There's one thing that I like about you is that you actually use social media for good. I do see. I think that elected officials, they should be using more social media. Oh my God, it drives me nuts when somebody say, oh, I don't need to do that, or that's not, whatever. But I really feel that that's where the people are at, and the people my age, in their 40s on up, we're typically on Facebook. So I get a big freaking sigh of relief when I see you so active on there. But you do have your haters. What do you say about the people that are like, oh, you shouldn't be on social media, you should just be doing your job, you're just a pretty boy that just want to show off, it's all about me? Because I'm sure you hear it, right?
Oh yeah. I guess my whole thing is I didn't take this position, or run for it, I should say, under the impression I was going to make everybody happy. I wouldn't. But my prediction is, I would say a super majority of Thurston County is probably happy with the way that things are going. And there are so many battles to overcome, right? I mean, policing is one of those unique professions where something 18 states away, a long ways away, can impact you directly here, right? Like somehow something that happens on the East Coast can undermine the trust of what's going on right here in Thurston County. And so there are many people, for their own good reasons, who were never going to like me. They were never going to like law enforcement in general. At the same time, I've had lots of prominent people who in their past really detested law enforcement send me emails, send me messages, show up to events and say, wow, you've changed my mind. You have changed my mind. And so I would say that, what's really coming to a head right now in my life is, I think a lot of people are going to be asking themselves the question, what should a sheriff be doing with their time? And it kind of goes back to what we just talked about. So there's the traditional way that a sheriff shows up Monday through Friday. They take the weekends off. They don't come in at nighttime, no matter how drastic the problem is. It can be an officer-involved shooting, and you never see the sheriff. Then there's what I believe the sheriff's job is. My belief is that the sheriff sits in the middle of a very complex three-way Venn diagram with business owners and citizens, residents. You've got elected officials, and you've got the employees of the sheriff's office. That is the Venn diagram that I sit in between. And no matter where I move within that bubble, someone feels left out. If I spend too much time in the community, then the deputies are kind of like, hey, we don't really see you. The support staff, hey, we don't really see you. If I spend too much time with elected officials, you become more of an elitist, right? You're just around your own ilk. If you spend too much time internally with just your deputies and staff, then the public are like, well, we don't really ever see you at these community functions. And so my question back to them is, how are you supposed to navigate that Venn diagram without the use of social media? How could you possibly engage with as many people as possible and get feedback from as many people as possible without technology in today's day and age? There's 305,000 people in this county. I could spend every single day trying to meet all of them and wouldn't even come close. So social media is the way that we're able to communicate in mass. And I'll argue it is the 21st century town square.
I agree. And that's what I tell a lot of the politicians that I work with when they are grimacing at the fact of using social media. It's like, you can only do so many community events. Like, you're not going to touch everybody. Like with social media, I mean, I've had days where you touch 1 million people. That's insane. It's insane. And they know exactly like where you stand at on that particular subject. I was going to ask you, what keeps you up late at night? Like, what's one of the things that you're just like, man, I really got to solve this for this department or for the community?
I think, so internally, I would say what keeps me up at night are my staff. I really take it personal when they're hurt. when they get assaulted. And you know, we've had some really close calls. So I do spend a lot of time coming out on like graveyard and stuff, because those are the staff who are least likely to see administrators or anyone other than their own employees. But I would say the health and wellness of my staff at night, and then arguably I would say the same thing translates to the community. You know, it makes me sick when I wake up in the morning and I see that, you know, 2 young men are shot in the crosswalk over mistaken identity and shot and killed. You know, those types of things, they keep me up. And the last piece I guess I would say is some of these cold cases also keep me up at night. You know, we've got quite a few families over the last couple decades in Thurston County who never really got answers about their loved ones, especially the ones who haven't even been able to locate a body and put those loved ones to rest. So I would say those are probably the things that keep me up the most at night. I have the utmost confidence in our staff, and I believe that they're going to do the right things for the right reasons. So I don't like go to sleep worrying about staff conduct. And at the end of the day, like, we've kind of established ourselves as an office that we're willing to hold our staff accountable when they go into that, when they pass that fray, when it's no longer an honest mistake and they move into that fray of intentional misconduct and criminal activity, we just fire you. But that kind of stuff doesn't really keep me up at night, because I know that I'm going to meet the expectations of the community on the back end. What really I think keeps me up, I think, is just worrying about my staff from getting hurt or killed. I tell our deputies, you know, after close calls and stuff, like, I'm not prepared to hand your wife and your kids a folded flag. I'm just not. So that's why we harp so much on officer safety, good patrol tactics, good decision making. And I also try to be realistic with them. The likelihood they're shot and killed is really low. Statistically, it's going to be suicide, so taking care of our mental health, and car crashes, so slow down. Those are the two things. And as a young deputy, I knew I was driving too fast. It's something that it's like you almost have to go through that process to learn to slow down. Like, the lights and sirens does something psychologically. It makes us think that we're a little bit better than we actually are, and that we can stop as fast as we think we can, and that we can make that corner. And so I'd really try to focus on some of those things. And I know that our sergeants and first line supervisors are also hammering down on that stuff. I think knowing what you're actually at risk of is really important to mitigating that risk, because, you know, if you watch YouTube, people are like, oh, you know, cops are going to get shot to death. And that's actually a pretty low occurrence. It's really going to be when you're standing on the road in the middle of the night and a DUI hits you on a traffic stop. It's going to be running code to a call that you probably didn't have to go that fast to. It's those types of things that we really need to do a better job as an industry.
Yeah. What types of you mentioned that if you have an officer that for some reason or another there's some misconduct, that you're willing to get rid of them. What does that look like?
Union process. Yeah. You know, I mean, we have to follow due process, obviously. And we have to let that investigation run its course. But, you know, a good example I'll give you is right when I took over, the previous administration left us an IA and it was a DUI. And they were like, hey, yep, this guy got a DUI. It's been sustained. This is your problem now. So they basically just left it for us. So on day one, I was faced with a decision, and we had a conversation, and we said, hey, listen, a big part of this administration is going to be reducing impaired driving collisions. Now we got an employee who's done that kind of undermines our mission. So we terminated him. I lost an arbitration. The union took it to arbitration. We lost. They said, you know, it's really great that you want to take this hard stance on impaired driving, but the previous sheriff allowed people to have DUIs and not get terminated. So you're dealing with past practice. So he was reinstated. I want to fully acknowledge he's probably one of our best corrections deputies. And I have a good relationship working with him, and it's not personal. For us, it was more of a stance, a public stance on where we are. And I think going back in time, I do the same thing. I do the same thing over, because you know what hasn't happened since that?
Probably DUIs.
No deputy's been arrested for DUI. And I think it sent that message of, okay, like the sheriff ain't messing around. And I sent an email out because, you know, we had to set the new standard of, if you are impaired driving, if you're driving around impaired, I will terminate you. And you can try to win your job back, I guess, on the back end. But I think that's the expectation of the public, right? we're out here with this hard stance, how we are going to take down impaired driving and reduce fatal collisions, and my own employees are out being part of the problem. And so, we've had some other ones come up, some sexual harassment that's been really bad inside the workplace. We fired all of those employees, with the exception of one who we disciplined, went to arbitration and won. And then we also had an employee who was arrested for voyeurism of all things, which was just like the most random. Anyways, he quit in lieu of termination, and then we assisted with his prosecution. And he's going to prison.
Wow. So you definitely are holding. Yeah, you definitely are holding them accountable. I'll be honest, I don't typically see that in law enforcement agencies. So I would imagine that there are other sheriffs, other departments that probably would call you a traitor.
I don't know, maybe, probably. But what's cool is that in this region, as far as I know, because police departments don't usually talk about discipline, that's the other problem. So you usually have to dig into record requests to even find out. Mm-hmm. We put a press release out for every single one of those, including the ones that we didn't fire, but we disciplined. And I know that came with some ire. But, the one thing I will say that's been kind of cool is I think in this region, it's fair to say that I've fired more staff than any other law enforcement leader. I think I've terminated probably 4 or 5 people. In fact, I had one person who tried to retire, and I rejected their retirement and fired them to prevent them from getting their benefits that they thought they were going to get after sexually assaulting another person or assaulting and sexually harassing someone. But what's really cool is that
rightfully so.
What's that?
I said, yeah, right. That sounds like a good fire to me.
Yeah. And what's really cool about this whole thing, though, is that despite that, we've had an absolute wave of lateral applicants coming from other agencies who have said, you know what, I'd really like to work for a sheriff's office where I'm empowered to do the job, I'm trusted to do the job, and I know that I'm not going to get stuck working with people next to me who lack integrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is good. I think integrity is important, especially in law enforcement. As a sheriff, why do you steal time? And I know we talked about this earlier, that you didn't really get the job description, but I'm sure other sheriffs, they don't spend time patrolling. Do you feel like that gives you an advantage to know what's going on that you might not see behind the desk?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Explain to me how, as a sheriff, you're supposed to go before your community at a town hall and tell them what the problems are on the front line if you haven't seen them yourself. Now, I will fully acknowledge that working patrol, even though it's what I share a lot on social media because it's intriguing for people and I think they're interested in it,
mm-hmm.
It probably accounts for less than 10%.
Like cops on Facebook.
Yeah. But it probably accounts for less than 10% of my actual job duties. Monday through Thursday is kind of boring. I'm in a lot of meetings. I'm listening to budget conversations. I'm drafting proposals. I'm reviewing different documents that are sent to me, signing things. It's really kind of menial. It's the administrative side of the job. That's Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5 kind of thing. Outside those hours, I get to make the rules about what I do. I get to determine where my time is most valuable, which community events I should show up to, whether I should work patrol tonight, whether I have the energy to work patrol tonight, or if I need to take a break. And I think the ability for the lead executive officer within an organization to show up and have some level of competency out on the street still makes wonders throughout the ranks. It's what I wanted, quite frankly, as a deputy. I wanted to see my leadership team at least come out, and you don't have to take the most complex domestic violence investigation and be the lead investigator. I'm not asking that. And most of the time I don't do that. You could at least show up and just back me on a traffic stop. You could handle that phone detail on the screen where someone's just asking about how to get a CPL or something like that. Just show a presence there. And I've obviously taken that to an extreme. I try to show up a lot. I try to swing by the jail. I routinely have corrections deputies tell me they've never seen a sheriff show up to the jail this much. Usually the jail is kind of the forgotten, like pretend it doesn't exist, just let it run in the background. And I've really tried to show up and at least get to know some of our deputies over there and make them feel like they're part of the actual organization and not just like the forgotten stepchild. So I think showing up in all aspects of the office are important. And I will fully acknowledge there are areas that I don't get to as much as I should. I have support staff that I don't see that much. I think things are going to change a little bit now that we're all in one building. But before, I had 3 different buildings across the county where I was supposed to be at all times.
At all times. I think it sounds like from everything that I'm hearing, it's going to be pretty hard to freaking unseat you.
Maybe, but listen, I have the exact same mentality going into this year as I did 4 years ago, and that is I can't lose. I can't lose. There's no possible way mentally that I can, because even if I'm not the sheriff in 2027, no one can take away from the absolute legacy that has been built over the last 3 years and 6 months. More has been done at the sheriff's office in the last 3 years and 6 months than the last 20 years. I'm telling you that right now. We have packed so much progress into such a short amount of time that I could walk away tomorrow and be like, yeah, we did that. Like together, collectively, no one ever made an impact that big ever again. And so similarly, at the end of the day, like I'm going to be a law enforcement officer one way or another. So the worst thing that happens to me on January 1st at midnight is that I go back to serving and protecting at a different rank. And I'm 100% okay with that. So are the gray hairs coming in on the side of my head.
And you shouldn't have gray hairs at this point, man. Something else that stuck out to me when I was doing a little bit of research on you. You chose to serve as a nonpartisan independent. Why was that important for you?
It's who I am. Yeah, I personally, this is separate from my professional life, but I've always been kind of a swing voter. I've always had a hard time identifying with a party and being like, yeah, I agree with everything you guys got going on here. I just have. I've had a really hard time with that. I find that they contradict themselves often throughout their policies, and then it becomes very tribalistic, where if you're not all on board, you're not on the team. And so I consider myself a legitimate swing voter. Like, give me a topic by topic issue, and I'll vote on those independently. And so for me, I just think that one of the things that's really cool is people keep trying to guess my politics. They keep trying to yeah, but you're really a Democrat, right? And you're really a Republican, right? And then when I show up at Republican stuff, they're like, you're kind of a Democrat, aren't you? And when I show up at Democrat stuff, they're like, you're totally a Trump supporter. And I love that no one can figure that out. And isn't that like the perfect scenario for someone holding the rank of something like sheriff or prosecutor? These should be nonpartisan. There's very little tolerance within these roles to really have a strong political affiliation.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is a good thing if there is, if that person is like truly centered and not like outwardly, I'm not this or I'm not that, but then in their heart, they're like far leaning left or far leaning right. What would you say to, because I got some people, they wanted me to ask you, did you vote for President Trump during any of the elections? And you can answer that or you can not answer it.
I did. Yeah, I did not vote for him. And I voted for him the first time he ran. And I would probably do it again, given who he was running against. I voted for him the second time. And I still think that we had a very troubling federal leadership during that time. And then after he lost that second election and I watched that whole piece transpire, I said, never again. Yeah, and I would tell you I'm not proud of that. But what I would also tell you is I have a real hard time. I don't know if I'll ever vote for a president ever again. I have a real hard time, I guess, feeling any kind of connection at this point to my federal government. I have a really hard time with it. Like,
why is that?
Because I don't see people running for president who are normal getting any shot. They are part of a political billionaire ruling class that I cannot relate to. I just can't relate to these people. Like Tony, I'm decently popular here in Thurston County. What odds do you think I have of running for president after I turn 35? What?
Well, that was actually another question from a community member, and I think the odds of you running and winning for president are pretty slim to none.
Yeah. I would give myself one fraction.
I think you could run for governor. I think you could run for mayor.
Yeah, but for president, right?
Yeah.
I am about $5 billion short of personal income, any kind of shot at that race. It's just federal politics is where I see a massive turn in the political landscape, where all of a sudden, somehow, people who make $180,000 a year are multi tens of millions of dollar millionaires. And that tells me there's something more going on there. I see a very sharp trend. A lot of our state lawmakers make medium wages. They do. That's our state government. And then there's something that happens at the federal level where all of a sudden, and you start hearing about all the insider trading and all these things. So
they're balling once they get there.
Yeah. And I look at the race of president, and I'll tell you what, it's really funny because people try to shame me for voting for Trump twice. And I mean, that's okay. That's why so many people are interested. They want to be able to use that against me and say, well, he's not really independent. Twice in a row, he voted for Donald Trump. And quite frankly, I'd never vote for him ever again, knowing what I know now.
And that's because of the J6 and...
Oh, yeah. Nothing worse than a sore loser. But, one of the things I would say is that that's also one of the reasons why people are rejecting all this tribalism and the identity politics. It's this sentiment of like, if you weren't with us every step of the way, then you're not on our team. And I've found that out recently. You start getting kicked out of rooms and kicked out of teams, and you're like, okay, noted. The independency is exactly where I belong. People who are taking issues one by one. And there's going to be a lot of people who really don't care that I voted for Donald Trump. It was my vote to make, and quite frankly, I made the vote. That's what I did. But going back and looking at time, the other question that maybe we should be asking is, have we thought about putting a really good candidate on the ballot who can relate to the average person, who isn't a billionaire? And the money in the politics at that level is just so asinine to me that I've lost really any interest in a lot of federal politics. I'm really disappointed with the Iranian conflict and all these other things going on that I'm just at the point where I've kind of checked out of federal politics. I'm really focused on state stuff and local stuff now.
So you being checked out of politics and choosing not to take one side, and I'll tell you, like, I have more in common with the Democrats, and I say that lightly. Like, I too will vote for my own interests, but there's just some stuff, on the other side that I'm just like, I don't know about that. But I do know that, it does come with a cost with certain things. Do you feel like that you've been, because of you not willing to choose a gang side? Because I like to think of it as like Bloods and the Crips. It's like, oh, you wear the color red, you're wearing the color blue. But have you lost out on anything because of it?
No. What I will say is, like, how silly is it that I've gotten to the point. So the last time I ran, I was grilled over this. So this isn't new questions. I was grilled over this the last time I ran about, like, who'd you vote for in the presidential primary? Like, as if somehow that's really going to have this drastic impact on who I show up as the sheriff. And it was really funny because that was one of the things that I looked at when I was when the ballot came out in 2023. I was like, I'm just not going to vote for anyone, and then you guys can't come ridicule me for who I voted for president. Because for me, it just isn't. It's become not even worth it, right? Like, when trying to be an independent, and I voted for so many people on different sides of the spectrum. And I'll also argue that I didn't vote for Donald Trump in any of the primaries. I voted for a different candidate in the primaries. But when you gave me the ultimatum, I made a choice. What's really interesting, though, is that there's kind of this sentiment of, well, like, like what you're talking about. Sanders is saying he's independent, but really like he's a closet Trump supporter. What's really interesting about that statement is that since taking over as sheriff, I've endorsed just maybe 22 Democrats for local and state office and federal office, and all but 2 of them have won their race. So I've got a pretty good win ratio on the people that I throw my name behind, and it'd be a really weird stance for a closet Trump supporter, if that's what you want to call me, to take to get a bunch of really competent, reasonable Democrats elected. I don't know. To me, that would be a really strange deal. But for me, again, I take it issue by issue, race by race. Who's the best candidate on the ballot? And when I'm considering a professional endorsement, using my name behind it, who is going to advocate for reasonable public safety measures? That's it.
And not what political party that they belong to.
I ignore the party.
Yeah. There's more of a human question. So it don't hurt your feelings a little bit? Because like when you don't get endorsements, like I saw recently, the Thurston County Democrats, they chose to endorse your opponent rather than you for this next race. And I'll be honest, like if somebody don't pick me, I just kind of get like my feelings get hurt. Your feelings wouldn't hurt at all?
Oh yeah, I mean they get hurt for 10 minutes. It
Yeah.
depends on the endorsement, right? And it depends on how much you care about the organization or the entity that's endorsing you or your opponent or whatever. And there's ones that feel really good, and there's ones that you're like, I don't really. And there's ones that hurt really bad. But I would say, it's interesting to see how quickly things change. One of the things that I'll say, because I don't want to get too far into any like campaign stuff, but one thing that's really interesting to me that I didn't necessarily anticipate. So there are a lot of people who supported me. I would say a lot, but there's some people who supported me my first time around. Have my phone number. They know how to get a hold of me. They've said nothing to me for 3 years and want to see me get removed from office now. And I think that's one of the hard things for elected officials is that we don't really get routine report cards, right? So your report card as an elected official comes up every 4 years. That's it. And it's only through an opposed election. Because if it's an unopposed election, is it really a report card, or you don't really know why you're running unopposed? It could be that you're so good, or it could be that just no one wants your job, or nobody cares about your job enough to run against you. Whereas as a deputy, every week I got to check in with my sergeant and be like, am I meeting your expectations? He say, yes, perfect, I move on. So you get that constant feedback. As an elected, it's really lonely for 3 years. And then all of a sudden, you look around, it's January of your year coming up to run. And all of a sudden, everything that people don't like about you comes out all at once. And you're like, well, if that was such a problem,
how come you didn't text me? Yeah. I wonder if, shit, you got social media. I wonder if that's a good avenue to use that. Like, how am I doing? Like, what, how am I serving you? How am I failing you? Which, yeah, I guess you can kind of take that with a grain of salt too, because then it becomes.
So I want to point out too, as far as I know, I hold 5 town halls a year. I have since my first year in office. I hold them geographically spaced throughout the county. So northwest, northeast, and then 3 across the bottom where it gets real long. Every year I hold those town halls, and they usually pull in decent crowds, 50 to 100 people. And I do a little presentation, and then I take unscripted questions for an hour. Anyone can show up. I put it out on social media. Anyone can show up. And if it's a law enforcement related question, I will answer it. And I'll be honest, the same 100 people show up every year. No one takes me on the offer to come ask me the unscripted question. Come ask me about these different things, almost like what we're doing right here, right? We have not gone over a script for any of these questions. You just hit me with the questions and I answered them honestly. And it's the same 100 people, and I love them. They're great. They come out and they sometimes have different questions based on, different trends. But it's kind of where I'm getting at is to say that you haven't had the opportunity to raise your issues. There's 5 town halls every year. I'm at every community event, it seems like. I answer questions at those. People pull me aside. People call the sheriff's office and schedule meetings with me, and I do 15-minute meetings where people are like, hey, and I have had some people come and say, hey, this one thing's a problem, and we work through those issues. But I'm just saying it's always interesting to see people who help you get in, then ignore you for 3 years, and then, run someone else to take your spot. And you're kind of like, well, okay. I mean, it's a little confusing. Normally, if you put all that time and investment getting your candidate in, I think that you'd want to help guide them. And I'm very grateful to, in contrast, the hundreds of people who have provided me input along the way. That's been very helpful.
Has there ever been any criticism that made you stop and reconsider something?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, 1 year into my year and a couple months, hired a Tacoma police officer who was acquitted in the death of Manny Ellis. And that was a really good lesson across the board. And I'm not here to pick a side. I'm not here to say what was right or wrong, because at the end of the day, it was one of those lessons where I managed to make everybody angry, which is really hard to do, actually, in today's day and age. It's actually pretty hard to make everybody angry. So, there were people who were mad that he was hired on. There were people who were mad that I accepted his resignation and he left. They thought I should have just kept him and stuck through it and dealt with the outcry. And I took away 2 lessons from that. The first was that entire process was my fault. It was at a time where staffing was so poor at the sheriff's office that I was just excited if anyone wanted to come work here. I really was. I was like, oh, so in meeting with him, I was excited, and I don't think he's a bad person. I don't. I think he's a great person. I think the Manny Ellis whole thing was completely tragic. But then, I also looked at it as a failure with him, and I failed him and the community because I should have known that those 2 weren't a match. I should have known. I should have known that. I should have been able to have the wherewithal to look into the future and see that, okay, how is this going to make people feel, right, wrong, or indifferent? How is this going to make people feel? So that was a big one where I held a town hall after that, and I let people come scream at me for 2 hours. I let people come scream at me through a microphone.
Were they screaming at you for real?
Oh, yeah, people were mad. Yeah, people were mad. Yeah. People, and I let them show up. People wearing masks, people just angry with me, right? And I'd had such a hot start as sheriff. I really did. I had a really hot start that this was the opportunity to be like, see, that we were just waiting for the other shoe to drop. But you know what? I held that town hall, and I sat up there, and my command staff chose to join me, and we took our ass whipping up on that stage. We did. And the takeaway from that was, you know what? Maybe it's time to slow down and think our hiring process through more thoroughly. Right, wrong, or indifferent about however you feel about his hiring. And so I'm here to tell you that we could have been fully staffed 3 years ago. We've had the applicants to do that.
Y'all are short right now, right?
Yeah, we still have 10 vacancies to fill. 10 left, which is we've filled a lot. We're just down to our final 10. But we could have been fully staffed a year ago. We had the candidates to do that, but I've always gone back to what the public told me, that this was their direction. Slow down, be thorough, make the right decision. And as a result, we've failed a lot of people through our hiring process and just said, hey, these things aren't going to cut it in Thurston County.
What type of things are that? I'm curious.
Sometimes it's just a general fit. Sometimes it's things that they've done in their past. Sometimes it's current issues going on at their agency. We have just generally become more picky through the process, especially on the discretionary side. Not so much on the mandatory, disqualifier stuff. Those individuals just get disqualified. But the reality is like, if I don't think that you are going to be an accurate representation of what we are trying to implement here at the sheriff's office, a proactive, compassionate, competent police department, you're not part of the team. That's just as simple as it is. Our hiring standards are very high. Now, I will also say that despite some of the staffing challenges that we're all facing, but ours specifically, we've had some pretty good outcomes as a result of the people that we're hiring. They're making really good decisions. They're doing all those things. So to me, it really has a lot to do with making sure that the quality of the person we have is applicable to the standard that we're trying to uphold. I personally attribute that to the good decisions that are made, to the de-escalation, to the better outcomes for everyone involved. I want the star players, and I'm willing to wait for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's good. That's what a way to turn that around, even though I'm pretty sure it probably feels like you got a gun to your head because you have those shortages.
Yeah.
And you got to make those good quality decisions. Because I mean, hiring process, I've hired some people where I'm like, they brief, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. We got them. We're in. And all that just to tell the public that you're staffed.
Right.
Staffed with the right people.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. I was going to ask you, there was a post where I saw where I think there was a guy who was impaired. I don't know if it was mental impairment or maybe there was some drugs going on with that. And one thing that you brought up was that there were mental health services on site with you. And I wanted to know more about that because I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, so we have a mental health team that works along with us. They're not sheriff's office employees; they're contracted. So what we do is we have a company that we partner with, a fantastic company. It's Olympic Health and Recovery Services, pretty prominent. They're a BHO, and the cool thing about them is that they have a field team that works with our patrol deputies, and they have a jail team that works inside of corrections. So it's the same company with the same employees who are providing those services, whether it's someone that deputies are encountering out on the streets, or once a deputy makes an arrest and brings that person in, now they're in the jail. And then when they get released from jail, they're getting the kind of that caseload management across the spectrum. So they work in both the jail and out on patrol. But out on patrol, basically they roll around in teams of two. And they're our mental health professionals. So they are the ones who are going around. Now they're not DCRs, so they can't like involuntarily commit people and those types of things. But they have access in their minds and then all this other stuff to all the resources in the county. So their job really is to be hyper aware of all the resources and the beds and the different social services that are available in the county, so that our deputies don't have to be the one size fits all for everything. And so I try to use them every time I'm out working patrol. I'm like, can Scout start this way? Like, yep. And I'm like, perfect. Like that's their issue to take care of. And now our deputies, the really expensive law enforcement officers that we train and hire to commit law enforcement, can move on and go do law enforcement stuff. In scenarios like the one that you saw, where we dealt with that guy who was, in delirium, just having them there to try to see if there's any way that that person can react to them, that maybe they're just not reacting to a person in uniform. Like we saw that night, it didn't work, but you could try. Nothing hurt to try. So yeah, in those scenarios, we try to get them out there and help de-escalate and slow the pace. Doesn't always work, but it's another tool we have in our tool belt.
Yeah, is that a service that started before you or after you?
Yeah, it started just before me.
Okay.
So it started just before me, and then we have been in conversations over the last couple of years to try to get it to be a 24-hour service. That's the only thing that we're short on. They go home at 10 p.m. So at nighttime, deputies are back to being the social workers. But yeah, that is a program that was started up by the previous administration, and it's paid for through treatment sales tax dollars. So
okay. Do you feel like that they're making a difference?
Yes, and the deputies love it, right? I mean, our whole goal is we're spending a lot of money to train and deploy deputies out into the community to do law enforcement work, and then so much of their time is spent doing social service stuff.
Yeah.
So any resources we can get there to free them up is a huge cost savings for us in terms of getting our valuable resources, those deputies, out doing law enforcement stuff.
Right, and do the actual deputies get training in mental health support as well?
Oh yeah, every year. Yeah, every year, state mandate. It's not even optional at this point in time. So every year they do crisis training. Every year we're doing patrol tactics training. Patrol tactics to me is really the most important part of it. I know that we went through our first iteration of patrol tactics, but as an agency, we've been teaching it for a long time, because patrol tactics is de-escalation. You do not have to be a psychiatrist to understand how to de-escalate a tense scenario. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I don't know a lot of psychiatrists who are going to run out into the field and de-escalate someone who's armed with a machete. That's not really how they work.
Right.
They're taking people who are rendered safe and stable and trying to deal with them there. What we're trying to do is not make our deputies become psychiatrists or mental health professionals. What we're trying to do is teach them proper patrol tactics that's going to allow them to slow the pace down, increase distance, and buy themselves time to make better decisions. That's all it is. It ain't rocket science at all. Not at all. It's the difference between me standing directly next to you as you're losing your mind and you're armed with a knife, and me forcing a shooting because, of course, you take one step and now it's justified, and me going to the back of my patrol car, putting an object in between us, slowing the pace down, and trying to build some sort of method of communication with you to convince you to drop the knife and it's not worth it and you have family and people care about you. I can't have those conversations if you are directly threatening my life within 10 feet. So all we're trying to do with de-escalation and patrol tactics is get our deputies in the mindset of doing the things that are necessary to keep everybody alive.
Awesome. I love that. So do you have like a strong buy-in with the deputies on this mindset?
Yes, 100%. There's one thing I'm most proud of. I think we legitimately at Thurston County have a culture of taking people in alive. I believe that. And that's not true across the country necessarily. We've seen proof of that. But I genuinely believe that there's no greater flex in law enforcement than, oh, no, you don't get to do the suicide by cop. You don't get to do those things. We're taking you in alive. And I think we have a very good track history. Now, sometimes that's not always possible, and it's really sad, and people force our hand and those shootings occur. But generally speaking, like, we have a very strong track record of, no, you don't get the easy way out. We're going to hold you accountable. Our job is to bring you before the courts.
Awesome. Yeah, I know how you doing good on time?
Good.
Okay, cool. I know we talked about, I was kind of thinking about the adults. Do you see any a lot of emergencies when dealing with children and mental health?
Yeah, but they're usually, so with children, it's not usually as extreme because they typically don't have access to the types of things that can hurt other people, right? So, like a child who's armed themselves with a knife is going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big problem. Most of the time that doesn't happen. Typically what we see with mental health crises involving people who are armed and violent are going to be adults. With children, I truly believe that we're still in the mindset, and it's the appropriate mindset, that these are disciplinary / mental health / child development issues. And so we don't have a lot of those. Deputies do get called to residences a lot about parenting issues, and one of the things that I try to resist is this whole sentiment of like, well, if you don't behave, then I'm going to call the police and have them put you in handcuffs. So we're not your boogeyman. And the last thing I want is to create a generation of people who believe that the police are here simply to discipline them and put them in handcuffs, right? I don't think that that's really effective. So I think there's been some changes in kind of that. But in terms of children and mental health, I think it's a big deal. But I also believe that most of those things are being properly dealt with through school counselors and psychiatrists and disciplinary things, right? Almost more like kids acting out. As opposed to now. Once we get to the high school era, things start to change a little bit, and I think that's where a lot of our mass violence issues are coming from. Obviously, we have mental health issues, and a lot of that starts with the family. It does, and not that it's their fault, but that's where a lot of these dynamics are being created. Family dynamics, bullying, lack of supervision, lack of after-hour school events for kids to go do safe things that are fun. Telling you what, right now, you give kids no guidance between the hours of 2:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. when mom and dad get home, you can count that things are going to go awry.
No, I agree. I agree with that. Something I wanted to put on your radar. I don't know if you've ever heard of PANS, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders. That's pretty much when have you ever heard of it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, good. That's pretty much when a kid can get strapped or any kind of illness, pretty much. And what happens is it affects their brain. And in this case, like basal ganglia is pretty much inflamed. And a lot of times it'll present like they're having mental health issues. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I want to also possibly send you some information on it, if you'd be willing to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Send it over.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. I've been meaning to send you that for a while. I think it's really important to get that education out there, because a lot of times, it can be the house, it can be mental health, but it can also be the physical part too. And that's what's going on in a lot of the kids, especially in our county. I know the population of these kids, they're growing quite a bit.
And it's kind of the similar concept of like, is it a DUI or is it a
diabetic,
right? And it's kind of the similar things of starting to understand the clues about, and I think we do get a lot of training. So we don't get a lot of training about every medical condition out there that exists. Mm-hmm. What we do start to get a lot of training of is building up the mental capacity for our deputies and myself, because I go through the training of asking ourselves, when we're dealing with individuals like that, could it be something more than what I think it is? That's the question that keeps getting posed in a lot of these trainings, is not necessarily understanding what all of these different things are and every single clue you could possibly look for, because I'm here to tell you that there's been times where we've gone to the ER after making a mistake like that, and the doctor's saying there's no possible way you could have known. These symptoms are going to present almost identically, and they're like, as a person with a doctorate degree, I have to run tests to figure out what the problem actually is. Our job, I think, in law enforcement, to keep things simple, is to simply be asking ourselves at all times, could this be something else? Mm. Before I handcuff this person and smash them into the ground because they're not complying, could this be something else? Could it be that they're having a seizure? Could it be that they can't comply? Can they comply? I mean, it's the same reason why all of our deputies are voluntarily exposed to the taser. Because if you've never been tased, you have no idea how bad it hurts. And in that short, it's not going to kill you, but in that short 5 seconds, you can't comply. So when I see people who are screaming with the taser as they're tasing someone who's going through a cycle, and they're not getting on their belly, I'm like, they can't. The only thing they can think about right now, they're in a different dimension. They've left their soul has left the body, and all they're thinking about is make it stop. Now, once it's over, they snap back and they're like, oh yeah, and now you gotta communicate with them. Get on your stomach. I told you, get on your stomach, roll over. But during that cycle, it's important to have that understanding of they can't comply. It's not possible. They can't do it. Their body is completely locked up. So I think, in the total context, it's important for us to continuously ask ourselves, could this be something more than what I'm assuming it is?
No, that makes sense. I always thought it was, I always thought y'all were just showing off when y'all would tase each other. When I think it was Fort Leonardwood with the military police, I would see them doing that, and I'm just like, what the fuck would they be doing that? But it makes sense. Like, in order to give it, you got to be able to receive it and know what that feels like, right?
Yeah, you do.
So as we're getting ready to close here, what is one thing that people would be surprised to learn about you?
I think what people would be a little surprised is how much my decision making is shaped off of my life experiences, and just how much in the gray that I tend to work. I am not a black and white person. So, laws and rules and procedures and policies are all really important. And it's also really important. The gray, that's the black and the white, the laws, the rules, the policies. The gray is understanding why they exist and when it's okay to break them. And I know people are like, oh my God, the sheriff is talking about breaking the law. And yes, I am. A really good example, because people say, well, your job is to uphold the law every time, no matter what, without bias. Okay, to some extent, my humanity and common sense and reason also has to play a part in this, right? For instance, if a DUI driver comes barreling down the road and starts driving on the sidewalk, and you run out of its way to save your life, should I arrest you for disorderly conduct for blocking the road?
No, I don't think so. No.
I don't think so, because our job is to look at the totality of the circumstances, to work within the gray, and then apply the black and white as applicable. And so I think a lot of times we get really caught up in some of these conversations about police discretion. And I want people to understand how important police discretion is. And police discretion is important to keep in check as well. So as a greater conversation, police discretion allows us to make those discretionary decisions to say, like, okay, yeah, this person did walk into the roadway without using a crosswalk. That's a violation of law. But the common sense human side of me is understanding why they did it. That's the gray. Police discretion also has to be kept in check, because without keeping it contained and understanding when to apply it, it can be used as a shield to cover up for racism and oppression and all these types of things, where you can start targeting people based off of, right? So that's where people start to perceive the criminal justice system as unfair, is when we're using discretion to only target a certain class or a certain race or a certain type of person. So I think it's important for people to understand how complex the system is, and how important it is to have elected leaders who really understand the importance of working in the gray appropriately, and understanding when to switch back and forth between the two, when it's most appropriate to move on from discretion and just handle the business black and white, and when it's appropriate to implement that discretion. And you really need, there's no amount of law degrees, there's no amount of that stuff that can help you here. What you really need are reasonable, competent people who can see the bigger picture. That is what we need more of in our lawmakers, Congress, president, all these types of things. I'm so tired of hearing how much money you have to have, how many degrees you have to have, how many accreditations you have to do these things. That is not where good governance comes from. Some of those people have these qualities. They can work between them, but not all of them do. So we need to be really careful, I think, as we look at our entire political spectrum and who's in charge, and understanding exactly who we should put in these positions based on a blend of life experience, lived experience, accreditations, degrees, education, workforce experience. All those types of things come together, but don't focus too much on just one category.
Yeah. You brought up race, and one thing that I want to ask you being mixed race, what does that look like as also being the sheriff? Is that a big deal to a lot of people? Do you feel like you get, like, I don't know, fair treatment maybe, or?
No, I don't.
The reason why I asked you this is it was weird. I was doing some research, and I typed in Derek Sanders, Thurston County Sheriff, and dude, that was literally like the first line was the fact that you were mixed race, and I was just like, why was that the thing that popped up first? Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's always kind of interesting to be the first of your group. So I'm the first biracial sheriff in county history. So I look a little bit different. I mean, I'm still pretty fair skinned, but I look a little bit different than my predecessors. I also think it gives me some perspective on some of the very real challenges. I love my family, and it can get a little messy back where I'm from. It's they not everyone has chosen the most productive path forward. We can say that. But what's really interesting for me is that I love them all the same. I love going home and having barbecues with them and being around them.
Where are you from?
California.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
and so and honestly, they're some of the people who ground me the most, because I remember that I'm looking at life through one lens, and I have family members who are African American who are looking at it through a completely different lens, and they're looking at it through a different community. They don't live here. And that's I think that's really helpful for me. And as we talk about all these different things that are going on, and it's kind of the same thing, whether the president says something off the wall or whatever, I'm like, well, I have people I love who look like that. I have people I love who have been to prison. still in prison.
Yeah.
That's the kind of life experience I'm talking about. It's the connection to people who have done bad things that you still care about. Growing up as a kid, I some pretty traumatic stuff, child abuse, domestic violence, all those types of things. And I can't tell you how many people in law enforcement who haven't experienced those things. And I hear them say, I don't understand why she doesn't just leave him.
Damn. Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'll just ask you one question. Have you ever loved someone who's hurt you? That's gray. That's not black and white anymore. You're talking about a very gray area. I can almost tell you why she's not leaving him or he's not leaving her. There's a good chance that they don't have the finances to do it. There's a good chance that they are fearful about what the world looks like without that support. They're fearful what it feels like when you have someone who you do love and there are good experiences, and then there's also abuse going on and financial control and social control. Those are the gray areas that degrees can't answer for you, unfortunately. You have to experience those yourself, or you have to know someone and care about someone and love someone who has experienced those things: drug abuse, addiction, abusive relationships, child abuse, all these traumatic things that occur with people, that you either come to the table with that or you don't.
Yeah. One would say, from hearing that, I would imagine they would say it sounds like it's not a negative thing. It sounds like it's a superpower for you to be able to see both sides of the coin. Because when you're talking, I'm thinking like it's the whole, pull yourself up by your bootstraps things. But if you'd ever even had damn boots, how would you know? And how would that person be able to have empathy for somebody without knowing? That's good.
Yeah. And you get to the point where you're kind of like, okay, with those experiences comes the ability where I'm not making decisions at this executive level where I get to make a lot of really important decisions without considering first the impact of everybody else. So there are no decisions I make where I'm not thinking about the citizens of Thurston County, the employees of the sheriff's office, other elected officials, those types of things. And I think a lot of electeds who don't have that kind of experience are making decisions in a vacuum. They're just making decisions just to make the decisions, and they're the decision they want, right? I've really tried to be methodical about why we make the decision, who it impacts, who it hurts, who it benefits. And I think that's a big reason why over the last couple of years, people are like, man, you've got so much common sense. Well, maybe, but I've also just really thought through my decision-making process on big decisions and little decisions. And the result of that is that you actually get at least a refined product at the end that doesn't have 100 holes you could poke through it. I've thought about those things ahead of time. And it's a result of my life experience.
Do you have people that you go to, kind of like a personal advisory committee that you run things to?
I have people that I trust implicitly. Yep.
I love it. I think that's the way that I do it. And that's the way that I feel like that helps me stay out of trouble, is being able to call somebody that's been there.
You have to. And, before we go, the other thing that's really interesting as an elected official is, for me, I don't really have a mentor at the law enforcement executive level. So when I took office as sheriff, I looked around and I'm like, who do I want to be like? Well, I don't really know. I'm kind of doing my own thing. So for a couple of years, I made some of those big mistakes that we talked about earlier, and I had to make them because I didn't really have that mentorship. And I actually had to go outside of law enforcement to find that mentorship. I couldn't find it where I was. So I could still apply some of the concepts, but it was really hard for me to find a sheriff who was a trailblazer and doing things different and had totally cut down this new path, and I could learn from that person. I felt like I looked around and saw a lot of the same concepts, theories. In fact, I found a lot of people who were not necessarily sheriffs or police chiefs, but a lot of people just sitting around waiting for someone else to kind of figure it out. And what's been really interesting through that whole process is that as we continue to progress down this path, now I've got people reaching out to me like, hey, how'd you do that? And I'm like, you should not be asking me. I am 32 years old. I've been in this role for 3 years, and at some point in time, you have to realize that you're blazing a new path. And you're just going to make mistakes. That's all there is to it. And at the end of it, you get to look back, and hopefully I've cleared a path for some other people to say, that could work in my community too.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the last question. What you mentioned legacy earlier, when it's all said and done and, you're like riding off into the sunset, going back to California or staying here or whatever. What does legacy look like for you? Or at least what do you want it to look like for you?
I care less about how long I'm in this position. What I would like my legacy to be is that was the most effective sheriff in the history of this state. No one was able to collaborate better. No one was able to communicate with the public better. No one was able to reason better. No one was able to make better changes at the state level as a sheriff. And my goal internally is to make this the best sheriff's office in the country. I want this to be the best sheriff's office in the country. And that starts with our people, the people that we hire, the people who I provide my trust in to go out and commit law enforcement, to run the back door of the department with support staff, the corrections deputies who are caring for inmates every day. I want this to be the best sheriff's office in the state. And I want people to look back and say, yeah, that time frame, that was the time to be a county deputy in Thurston County Sheriff's Office, and everyone wanted to be there.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. I think we'll close on that. If you could give us the last statement, something that you would want the residents of Thurston County to know, and abroad, what would that be? Just in general.
Well, I care about you. The weight of the stars are pretty heavy. I lose a lot of sleep worrying about the people that I'm responsible for. I feel personal ownership for all 305,000 people in this county. And I really just want this to be a safe place where you guys can run your businesses. You can take your kids to the park. You can really thrive and enjoy your lives. That's my goal.
Ooh, that was great. If you enjoyed this podcast, well, I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you're still here with us, what I want you to do is head over to your favorite podcast and streaming network and give us a download, subscribe to the channel, and also let us know what you think about the show. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for the things that you've done. Thank you for the things that you're doing. And especially thank you for the things that you're going to do, because I know that you're going to do something amazing.